In this video, we're going to look at a number of different sources on Bityah, the daughter of Pharaoh, who is this Gentile woman who comes down to the Nile to wash herself of the idols of her father's house. And she is the woman who then saves Moses and names him and raises him as her own. So we'll get into a number of different sources. And there's a lot of ground to cover, so let's begin. The end of Exodus 1 and the beginning of Exodus 2. Then Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, "Every boy that is born to you, or that is born, you shall throw into the Nile, but let every girl live." So he's saying, of all the Hebrew boys that are born, throw the infants into the Nile. And then we have the birth of Moses here. And when his mother could hide him no longer, she took a wicker basket for him and caulked it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child into it and placed it among the reeds by the bank of the Nile. What's interesting to me about this is the wicker basket that she gets for him and caulks with pitch and bitumen and pitch. The same word for this wicker basket is used to describe the ark. So they're both called hateva, the ark. So both Moses and Noah spent time in an ark. And they both brought eternal covenants to the world as well. His sister stood at a distance to learn and see what would happen to him. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to the Nile to bathe in the Nile, while her maidens walked along the Nile. She spied the basket among the reeds and sent her slave girl to go fetch it. And when she opened it, she saw that it was a child crying, and she said, "This must be a Hebrew child." Then his sister said to Pharaoh, "Shall I go and get a Hebrew nurse to suckle the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said, "Yes." So the girl went and got the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child and nurse it for me, and I'll pay your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed it. When the child grew up, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, who made him her son. She named him Moses, explaining, "I drew him out of the water." So here we have this woman who's down bathing in the Nile, and she notices this box floating, and she is eventually the one who gives Moses this name and takes him on as a child. So now we'll get into the sources on this woman. They're quite remarkable, and you'll see how they're connected here to the 7 laws of Noah and just pure monotheism, turning away from idolatry. The parents of Moses saw the child. His form was like an angel of God. They circumcised him on the 8th day, and they called his name Yekotiel. And you'll find this name Yekotiel in 1 Chronicles 4:18 as one of the names of Moses. If you look that verse up, 1 Chronicles 4:18, you'll see there are 6 names there known as the sons of Bityah, daughter of Pharaoh. So this is where we get her name from, the daughter of Pharaoh, Bityah. And the sources on this verse say that all of these names refer to Moses. So they are other names of Moses. And what's interesting here is it says that they circumcised him on the 8th day. I've seen other sources that say that he was actually born circumcised, which is interesting to me because there's another hint and connection to Noah, in that Noah was also born circumcised. So again, if you want to learn the 7 names of Moses, you can find the 6 of them in 1 Chronicles 4:18 as sons of Bityah, daughter of Pharaoh. They concealed him in a house of earth for 3 months. After 3 months, she put him in an ark of bulrushes, and she cast him upon the bank of the river. Now Bityah, the daughter of Pharaoh, was smitten sorely with leprosy, or sara'as, or this really bad skin condition, and she was not able to bathe in the hot water. So she came down to the Nile, and she saw this crying child. She put forth her hand and took hold of him, and she was healed. She said, "This child is righteous, and I will preserve his life. Whoever preserves a life is as though he had kept the whole world alive." Therefore she was worthy to inherit life in this world and life in the world to come. And this skin condition and bathing in a river we find this again in the Torah with Naaman, who in the Talmud is called a toshav, and who, at least one rabbi recently said publicly, Naaman was the only real Noahide in the Tanakh, in the entire Bible. So we have this woman here turning away from idol worship and washing herself of the idols of her father's house, and washing herself from this exact same skin condition that this one toshav or noahide had. So they share this same skin condition, and they both washed in the river. Of course, Naaman washed in the Jordan 7 times. The verse continues, and she saw the ark among the willows, and it says here that her maidens tried to discourage her from saving this child. And she did it anyway. And it says, after the maidens tried to convince her not to save Moses, the angel Gabriel came and beat them to the ground, and they died. And here's a source. She rises while it is still night. This is Bityah, the daughter of Pharaoh. She was a Gentile and became a Jewess. And they mentioned her, or a Judaism, or Yehudiah, and they mentioned her among the proper women, since she took care of Moses. Therefore she merited and entered the Garden of Eden in her lifetime. By the banks of the river, she had been able to step into the Nile waters to completely cover the basket and hide it from all directions. So this is Moses' mother, who placed it strategically so that the people who were just walking by along the riverbank would not actually notice it. This is why the daughter of Pharaoh did not discover him until she actually descended into the water to bathe in it. Her servant maids walking alongside the river did not see the basket, and neither did any of the traffic. And she called his name Moshe, or Moses. And from here you can learn about the merit of those who perform acts of kindness. Even though Moses had many names, the only name that was set throughout the entire Torah was the name that Bityah, the daughter of Pharaoh, called him. Even the Holy One, blessed be he, did not call him by any other name. So this is the name that he's referred to throughout the entire Torah, even by Hashem, or even by God, this name that the Gentile woman gave to him. And it says here the Egyptian woman would try and snatch these babies. And this is why the Torah reports that his mother, after Moses was 3 months old, no longer risked hiding him at home. The situation was in effect for a relatively short period, as 3 years earlier, when Aaron had been born, the decree had not been enforced. It appears to have been cancelled shortly after Moses' birth, perhaps due to the intervention of the daughter of Pharaoh, who had been audacious enough to save Moses' life. So this decree of Pharaoh may have ended thanks to Bityah, the daughter of Pharaoh. And from here, earlier she was called Ha-Yehudiah, the Judaitis, or the Jewess. From here, Rabbi Yochanan learns that anyone who denies idolatry is called Yehudi, or Yehudiah, is called a Jew, or a Judaite. There may be some broader implications of this statement. Rabbi Yochanan may be saying, in a sense, that all those who deny idolatry in his day are actually Jews. While I wouldn't go so far as to say that he does not require conversion, he may be saying that when it comes to being inside the Jewish people, one way to be in is simply to deny idolatry. So she converted, in a sense, to monotheism, to 7 laws, the covenant that was in place at the time. And, of course, noahides to this day are attached to Israel, or seen as in a way. And then they go on here. It's to say that the notion that anyone who rejects idol worship is called Yehudi, or Jew, or Judite. How could Pharaoh's daughter be called a Jew? The answer is that she too rejected idol worship. Rabbi Yochanan interpreted going down to the Nile to bathe as an act of washing herself from the idols of her father's house. Pharaoh's daughter did not really give birth to Moses. She only brought him up. from here we learn a message that is so important for all adoptive parents. Anyone who raises an orphan or adopts someone is treated as if they were his actual parents. At the time of the child's abandonment, God sent scorching heat to plague the Egyptians, and they all suffered with leprosy and smarting boils. The daughter of Pharaoh sought relief from the burning pain in a bath in the rivers in the waters of the Nile. But physical discomfort was not her only reason for leaving her father's palace. She was determined to cleanse herself as well of the impurity of idol worship that prevailed there. And it says they're referring here to the maids who didn't go into the Nile. They stayed on the bank. And it says here, in reference to that, "Here I am pursuing a path that will result in my death." The scholar in the Talmud has the servant maids warning the daughter of Pharaoh, who was actually going to use the waters of the Nile as a mikveh, a ritual bath, in order to cleanse herself from the desecrations that were a daily occurrence in her father's palace, by warning her that even when other people might disregard the king's command, surely his own daughter would not dare do so. It's interesting here that it says that she was using it as a mikveh, which is in place to this day when someone wants to quote-unquote convert. So there are some sources on this woman, and I just want to point out a couple more things. There have been some other daughters of Pharaoh in the Tanakh. For instance, Hagar. Hagar, who is the mother of Ishmael and one of, I guess you could say, the concubines of Abraham. And Hagar, her name, you could easily say it as Hagar, the convert. So she would have converted from idolatry to, again, monotheism. And then there was another. Actually, here's a source on Hagar. She was the daughter of Pharaoh. When she saw the miracles which had been performed for Sarah's sake, she said, "It is better for my daughter to be a handmaid in this man's house than to be a mistress in another man's house." And then, of course, there was one more daughter of Pharaoh whom Solomon married. So a wife of Solomon. It's very interesting. So I hope that gives you some insight into this woman, the daughter of Pharaoh, and how she turns away from idolatry and takes on the Noahide laws, monotheism.